Good day, welcome at the NTV. Let's talk about a really important topic, sexual harassment at the Erasmus University. My colleagues, our editors, Tim and Feba, are currently investigating this matter, so we'll be discussing this with Tim. And later this episode, we asked students, how do you feel about the changing of the corona measures?
Going out again is quite a nice alternative to just sitting in the library studying, but I'm also kind of worried how it's going to turn out.
I'm glad life is coming back to normal, but I am scared about the possible hospitalizations.
Welcome, Tim. Are you happy that there are no corona measures left here?
I am actually. Well, not necessarily here, but I went to a concert last week and it was a lot of fun.
I can imagine after such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you have some different topics on your mind. As I said, Feba and you are currently investigating sexual harassment at the Erasmus University. Why are you doing this? Is there something you are worried about?
Well, we know it happens a lot. Like, for example, Amnesty International reports that in the Netherlands, 1 in every 9 female students are raped during their studies. Students are also in an age group where sexual harassment happens a lot. But what we don't exactly know is to what extent sexual harassment happens within the walls of the university or between students. And I think that is important to know. I remember a case from a few years back where a student was sexually assaulted, and then a few months later she was in class, and there the guy who assaulted her was also taking that class. And these things happen between students, so if you know that as a university, you can also do something about it, because these students will meet each other in lecture halls, in campus buildings, in housing situations on campus maybe.
And how are you, you trying to figure out how much this is happening? How are we doing this?
Well, we're not only trying to find out how much is happening, because I think sexual harassment is something that is also, it's not only a story of victimhood, it's not only a story of experience, it's also a story about behavior, it's also about circumstances, it's also about attitudes. So what we also looking into is what kind of types of behavior do students find sexually transgressive, for example, or we want to know what they expect of the university in these matters, and we want to know how they behave themselves as well.
Yeah, so you put up a survey.
We did, yeah, because I think a survey is a good way to look beyond incidents. So we developed that survey together with a lot of help, for example, from academics at the Erasmus Love Lab, a confidential counselor, the Diversity and Inclusion Office. So they all helped us out developing this survey. And that's where kind of help from students comes in, because we need people to fill in this survey, like to get a good image of what's really happening.
And are you also asking them, if something happened, did you report it, and how did that process go?
We do. That's something we want to know as well, because we already know that the number of reports is kind of low. Mm-hmm. It's really low, actually, especially when you look at official complaints. I believe in 5 years' time, only 10 official complaints were made, and that is about unwanted behavior in general for the entire university. And well, simple statistics kind of say that that's not all the unwanted behavior that happens.
And if students apparently feel not safe enough to report this, how do you make sure that they feel safe enough to share their stories in a survey or with us?
So yeah, I think it's important to mention that the Erasmus magazine is entirely independent from Erasmus University. So, for example, our website isn't hosted by the university, and survey answers that we receive cannot be traced back to individual students. So information remains anonymous. If people still don't want to take the survey, they can always reach out to Feba, our colleague, or me by email, for example. And I think it's important that people feel safe while doing this, because I know that reading or doing a survey like this about sexual harassment or sexual violence can be a trigger for a lot of people. So I always say that, like, when you get negative feelings or negative thoughts while doing something like this, it's a good idea to think about contacting a confidential counselor, or take a look at the Dutch Sexual Assault Center. They offer tremendous help in cases like this.
And did you already have some results?
Well, we don't really have some results from the survey yet, but Feba has been interviewing a lot of students past couple of weeks. Yeah, one thing we noticed is that a lot of people have a story about sexual harassment in some way or another. And what we found interesting is that, I'm not sure how to say this correctly, what we see a lot is that people tend to kind of downgrade what happened to them. So something we hear a lot is, well, it happened but it happens a lot, or well, it happened,
they make
but
it less
wasn't
important, but it is
exactly
an important thing, and you.
It is, and I'm not entirely sure what that means, because it can mean that some cases sexual harassment doesn't really have any serious consequences. I think that's a possibility, but we also know that there's a lot of shame involved. There's a lot of feelings of guilt.
And if you make it smaller, it's easier to forget. That, I think, will also be an important part.
Maybe,
Yes.
yeah, but that's something we really want to know in our survey as well. And maybe one more thing. Like I said, there's not a lot of complaints being made. At the same time, we see that the number of reports to the confidential counselors, for example, has been on the rise the last couple of years. But also the confidential counselors say that, well, what we see is only the tip of the iceberg. So basically, we don't really have an idea what's happening either. So I think that's, and they say that about unwanted behavior in general, but yeah, I think that's another important reason to do this investigation.
So when will we get the first results from the survey?
By the end of April.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a month before we know.
Yeah. The survey is on our website, erasmusmagazine.nl, and people can complete it for until next week. Yeah, so it will be open for another 10 days.
Okay, well, we will be watching this, of course, really closely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's go now to the report Ficheroux and Carolina made. They went on to campus and asked students, how are you feeling about the relaxations of the corona measures?
For many a blessing, but for some a curse. Officially, we do not need these anymore here in the Netherlands, because all COVID measurements are completely lifted. We are here on campus to find out how students feel about this change. What do you think about the full relaxation of the measurements?
Well, I think it's a very nice thing right now because we really needed that space to go, physical school and stuff like that. It is a bit nerve-wracking for me because I feel a bit unsafe because of the lifting.
I agree partially in lifted them, but I still am a bit worried about that. But since I'm not in my hometown and maybe I'm far from my parents, I am less worried about it.
It makes sense now. You're at this point where everybody doesn't comply with it anymore either way.
Well, I'm really glad to see student life kind of come back on campus. So obviously I'm really happy about it, but I don't know about the consequences.
Going out again is quite a nice alternative to just sitting in the library studying, but I'm also kind of worried how it's going to turn out.
I'm glad the life is coming back to normal, but I am scared about the possible hospitalizations.
Do you still follow some basic measurements?
When I see too many people, but usually not that much. Seeing that everybody is not worried maybe influenced me in my behavior toward COVID.
Washing hands, stuff like that, wearing face masks were mandatory, that's like obviously, but otherwise it really feels like it came back to normal.
Testing if you have symptoms, and I try to be a little cautious of not going out too much.
Just regular washing hands and also taking tests when I have symptoms.
Do you know some students who feel uncomfortable?
For example, even in the elevator, some people asked us to put the mask, and I was completely okay with that. If I don't follow some rules, I can influence the freedom of other people that prefer not to do that.
I've definitely seen some, and I think it's completely fine, it's their decision, but generally I don't really see a lot of people wearing masks.
Everyone just seems happier or like more relaxed and more optimistic. You know, it's just the general atmosphere at uni is better.
Like the overall mood, it's a positive change, yes.
Now I'm going to meet my friends and drink together. Yeah, I missed life.
Thank you all for watching, and please don't forget, we need your help. Fill in this survey. Thank you, and thank you also for watching.